McDonald's presents Burger Reviews by Hamburglar, the classic cheeseburger. Hamburglar? Rubble, rubble. He said, the patties are juicier than ever before. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Rubble. Available at most restaurants in this area.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
Have you found the keys to unlock your best trip? On a Trafalgar tour, you unlock more than just the world. We give you the keys to discover real connections and one-of-a-kind experiences. It all starts with expert itineraries where everything is taken care of. With Trafalgar, your money goes further, and so do you. Unlock your best self. Discover more at trafalgar.com/unlock. That's TRAFALGAR.com/unlock.
How's it going? And welcome to episode 30 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at OnTheWirePod. And if you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, please take a second to let us know what you think. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me on the Twitter at 80grade. That's all spelled out. And today I am without the 2020 TGFBI champion Kevin Hastings, who of course can still be followed on the Twitter at HastingKevin, while enjoying time away with his family and definitely not spending time in Vegas, unfortunately. Instead, I brought in a ringer to help break down the late season FAAB options, and that is Jordan White. Jordan is no stranger to the show, having joined us back in March for a special preseason episode, and of course can be heard regularly co-hosting the In the Deep podcast, which comes out every Monday alongside Christopher Weber. Make sure you're following Jordan on the Twitter at Button Singles. That'll be linked in our show description. And in case you forget, you can always go to the Twitter search and you can search for Aaron Ashby and Jordan will pop right up. At least that's what I found. Jordan, it comes as no surprise to me after listening to you and seeing what you have to say about Ashby in the PL Discord. So congratulations on being the top Ashby fanboy, at least on Twitter. You know, that at least what I've seen.
Absolutely. It's a title that I'm very happy to hold, honestly. Been on that train for a long time. And honestly, like anyone who wants to join that club, please. It's lonely right now. There's not that many people talking about him, which is surprising to me still. But
I'm on the train. I'm on the bar car. I'm in the bar car drinking, and I'm just going to relax and wait to see where it goes.
I'm driving the train. You're hanging out in the back, having a drink and just chilling. That's the move, to be completely fair. But yeah, thank you for having me. Obviously, like it's nice to be here. Thank you for thinking of me and bringing me on here. I know that for me personally, calling me a ringer, I think is a little bit generous, but
it's perfect because what you and Chris talk about on In the Deep, honestly, are a lot of the same players that we're targeting in these FAAB bids, especially in 15 teamers. These are guys on In the Deep. You talk about guys that are typically 20% rostered or below, if I'm not mistaken.
We do 20% or less rostered between ESPN and Yahoo leagues.
Yep. So there you go. And obviously that'll change based on the platform you're on. Percentages typically go up, especially for outfielders when you hit the NFBC, when you're playing with a 5 outfield platform like the NFBC. But typically we always talk about Yahoo. I'm in plenty of Yahoo leagues myself, and most of them start off at 3 outfielders. So I find that outfield is the one that has the biggest swing when it comes to rostership. But yeah, we talk about a lot of the same players, so you have a lot of really good insights in there. I think that you'll be able to fill Kevin's shoes rather.
Those are big shoes to fill, man. That's tough.
I have yet to meet Kevin in person, but I assume that the shoes are at least, they're fillable though. They're fillable.
They're not like Shaquille O'Neal sized.
We'll see. Yeah, it's possible. All right, but you know what? Let's get right into it. We'll hit up our news and notes. We're going to bounce things back and forth between Jordan and myself. But as the guest, I'm gonna shoot this one over to you first, Jordan.
All right.
Because I know that you and Schwibsley like to talk about the Giants so often on In the Deep. I'm going to start off in San Francisco with Donovan Solano testing positive for COVID-19 and, of course, was placed on the IL. Solano's time in the lineup was spotty as of late, but do you think this creates any more consistent playing time for someone else in San Francisco infield, or do the Giants just simply backfill Solano's role with another bench piece?
Like you said, his playing time was pretty limited, and he was splitting most of it at second base with Tommy La Stella, who I expect to see most of the run at second base with Solano now absent from the lineup. La Stella is only hitting about 254 on the year, but he has managed to slash 316, 350, and 474 over his last 13 appearances in the past 2 weeks, which is a good batting average floor to work with and something that I know like a lot of my teams really need. Today, he's actually hitting second behind in the deep favorite Lamont Wade Jr., who's one of my favorite guys, because they're facing a right-handed pitcher in Huascari Noah. But he did bat eighth yesterday against left-handed pitcher Max Fried. So I guess you gotta keep an eye on whether they're facing a left or right-handed pitcher if you're in a daily lineup league, something like that. I think that I feel super comfortable running him out against a right-handed pitcher just due to that better lineup spot. He still is like a career 264 hitter against left-handed pitchers in his career. So even if he is hitting eighth, I don't think it's a bad idea to run him out there. I do think that he's more of a stopgap measure than like a consistent starter, depending on the depth of your rosters. But you can certainly do worse for a second baseman or a middle infielder spot.
Absolutely. And sometimes that's ultimately at this stage of the game, with the amount of injuries that we've seen all year, and any kind of stopgap that you can find can be useful.
Yeah, I guess one little note that I would add too is like this coming week, La Stella and the Giants are lined up to face three lefties in a row between Brett Anderson and Eric Lauer of the Brewers, and then David Price of the Dodgers. So they recently recalled Thairo Estrada, and that's probably going to be the person that would most likely steal playing time from La Stella as a right-handed hitter. So that's something to keep an eye on to see if they still run out La Stella. I know that yesterday, again, like I said, they ran out La Stella against Max Fried in the 8th spot, but again, you got to be careful with that to see how many opportunities he's actually going to get against those left-handed pitchers.
Yeah, the Giants have been proven all season that they're not afraid to platoon pretty much every position.
That's the crazy part is this past week seeing the tweet that I think Alex Fast posted that the Giants are leading the league in home runs and they don't have anyone with more than 20.
Yeah, he heard that on the broadcast and tweeted that out. That was amazing.
That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. But
it sounds a lot like the Rays leading the league in saves, but having 9 different people get saves exactly from last year.
Yes, the Rays bullpen of offenses.
There you go.
Sure. Love it. All right. I'm going to try to throw the ball back at you now.
All right, let's hear
it. For this? Ready to catch this? All right. Matthew Boyd and Corey Kluber are both set to make their returns to their respective teams on Sunday. So that would be today, the day of this release. Which of these two pitchers are you most excited for, and which do you think is going to make a bigger impact down the stretch, assuming that they stay in the respective rotation the rest of the season?
Well, I want to say, at first, when I was looking at this, I wanted to say neither, but that's not an option. That's not the way it was worded. Enough. I get that. But I think it's got to be Boyd at this point, based on just what both of them have been doing in their rehab stints, and then also the opportunity that the Tigers are going to probably present to Boyd down the stretch compared to what the Yankees might do with Kluber. I really don't know what to expect with the Yankees rotation now with Kluber back, and how far he's going to go into games, especially to start. He has not looked very good in his rehab starts, to say the least. He went 3 2/3 in his most recent one, giving up 2 runs, a walk, 5 hits. Before that, he only lasted 1 1/3, 5 runs, all earned, 2 hits off of only 2 hits, and walked 4. So those were also down at AA, which I understand is more of a proximity thing than anything else. But Boyd's was all in AAA, and so the competition is a little bit better at that level. And I would say that he definitely performed much better. He had 3 rehab starts of his own. He went 2 innings, then 3 innings, then 4 1/3. Love to see that the progression throughout that process. He only gave up a total of 5 hits through that time, no earned runs, and the best thing, no home runs, no walks. That's what you want to see
with him. Yes.
As a former Boyd boy, that's what you want to see.
A recovering Boyd boy?
A recovering, yes, that's a better way of putting it. And so I also think that the Tigers are going to just have more opportunity to play him every 5th day, as long as he, can prove that the rehab was not a fluke and he's healthy, especially as they're trying to save the likes of Scooble and Casey Mize and Matt Manning, who are only going like once a week, if not at least every 6th day instead of every 5th day.
Yes.
So I think the opportunity is going to be there. He's going to have more opportunity to volume his way into counting stats for most fantasy rosters the rest of the way.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really have a whole lot to add to this one. I'm pretty much on board with you every step of the way with it. Yeah, Boyd's just looked strictly better. He's getting a little bit more, like a lot more volume than Kluber is. It just feels like a safer bet. And like you said, with those young pitchers trying to limit their innings, he's going to get plenty of run here at the end of the year. So I'm definitely more comfortable with Boyd coming back here shortly.
And Boyd rostered in the main event at 54%. So he's still readily available out in those deep 15 teamers. And so Kluber is at 51%. So they're both pretty equally. They're going to be equally bid on, I think. If I had a little bit of extra cash in my FAAB, I'd probably be directing it more toward Boyd. Kluber is probably my second or third contingency plan on that list for this week, personally.
By the way, how much FAAB do you have left in TGFBI now?
Oh, that is a good question.
This is always a fun question to ask people. I'm going to look mine up too. I have $96 left. That's what I have.
I'm at $257, and that's only because I think I spent over $100 last week and over $100 the week before. So I went in, I had I think I had over 500 recently, and I've been pretty frugal. I've been pretty frugal in TGFBI and actually in 2 of my 3 NFBC FAAB leagues. I've been pretty frugal. So I had the hammer when Eloy was coming back. I was able to grab him. In the week after, I still had enough to win out Jaron Duran, which hasn't had its perks and ups and downs. Sure. He's back up now. I put him back in the lineup. But TGFBI, I'm at a point. I think I talked about this last episode. I'm at a point where I think I'm not near the top. Like I don't have the most, but I'm in 3rd place right now in TGFBI. And I have the most FAAB considerably until you get down to Mike Curlin, who's in 6th place in my league. And so I don't have a lot of competition for FAAB at the top. Yeah. And especially in a league like TGFBI, usually the top half of the league is the league that's still paying a lot of attention at this point in the season. There are some leagues, man. There are some leagues that we were talking about this with Jenny last week. Jenny Butler.
Yes.
And
my league mate, actually.
Yeah. And there's some leagues out there that have the leader has 140 points. And I'm like, why? Like the leader, Rob Sherwood in my league has 125, but the second place has 111. So there's still a little bit of competition there. I'm leading another league of mine at 96. So they're definitely top heavy in a lot of these leagues.
I'm trying to think what my league leader is actually at for points. I think it's 117. So it's 117 and then Jenny is in second by 2 points. It's 115. So it's really close at the top.
Yeah, and then what's at the bottom?
The bottom is, let's see, how many points are they at? 34.
Oh, okay, that's lower than mine.
There's a few people that aren't paying attention in our league, but most people are still at least putting the effort in and putting in bids every week.
So let's talk about one other pitcher for you, Jordan. Kwang Hyun Kim will start Sunday. That's today, like you said. For those who don't know, we do record this on Saturday nights, and this goes out first thing Sunday morning. So if we do throw out a today every now and again, and we meant Saturday, sorry. But we've been doing this all year the same way. So hopefully you figured it out by now.
This is the longest season in the world. Yeah. we're bound to make mistakes at one point or another. We are not perfect. We are only human. We are not baseball analyst robots.
I think that's on the docket for 3 years from now. I think that's part of the CBA for our industry.
I just want a chip that can go into my brain and replace the baseball analytical part of it and just do all the work for me. I want a supercomputer in my brain. I want to become a baseball android.
There we go.
That's what I want to be.
Goals. All right. Anyway, Kim is going to start for the Cardinals on Sunday, taking Jack Flaherty's spot in the rotation after he was sent back to the IL and will probably miss the rest of the season. Can you see Kim adding any value to fantasy rotations down the stretch, assuming he racks up a few more starts through September?
So I think that he can. Looking at his upcoming schedule that he does have a game today. Again, today meaning Sunday. Course, against the Pirates. And then his next start is lined up to be against the Brewers. And those are both teams that have xwOBA ranked in the bottom third of the league against left-handed pitchers on the year. And since the All-Star break, they're both in the bottom half of the league. So I think those are 2 really good offenses to face Kwang Hyun Kim against. That means that he's going to be worth some consideration. And we also know that he's capable of maintaining like a certain level of success over an extended period. His first 4 starts in July were excellent. I don't think he gave up an earned run in any of his starts in his first 4 starts in July. And then he blew up at the end and gave up 5 to Cleveland. But the downside is that he is building back up from an IL stint of his own. due to some left elbow pain. And like elbow pain is the last thing we want to see when it comes to pitchers coming off the IL. I would just basically keep a real close eye on his start today against Pittsburgh. But if he can work even relatively deep into that game, I'd feel definitely okay running him out against the Brewers, as much as that pains me to say.
Yeah, I think even more so if it's one of the situations where he can't go deep into the game against Pittsburgh. That's more of a red flag than if he does, being a green flag, if you will.
Exactly, yeah. And if it's like a pitch count thing where they're keeping his pitches low and he can't go deep into the game because of that, that's one thing. If it's he's being super inefficient, that's a completely different thing. So I would get a gauge on that for sure, and then use that information today, excuse me. There we go.
There it is.
Just did it. Use that information today to make an informed decision on your FAAB bidding.
Yeah, I guess the benefit is if he does face off against Milwaukee next week, he'll miss out on the Dodgers right after that. But he'll get Cincinnati at home, which is obviously better than going to Great American Ballpark. But he might miss out on the Mets series after that. So keep a look on that schedule as well. This schedule is going to be a major theme of a lot of things I talk about this episode. At this time of year, schedule trumps talent sometimes based on what you need.
Especially when it comes to pitching specifically, yes. For sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to another question for you. Our first hitter here. So Rhys Hoskins is slated to have surgery next week to remedy an abdominal injury, and Alec Boehm was optioned back to AAA after he struggled pretty hard over the last month or so. With those moves in mind, what opportunities do you see in the Philadelphia infield now that those two are no longer in the picture?
Yeah, that's good. Brad Miller was already filling in for a bit when Hoskins was out before, and it looks like he slides right back into that role. Has been starting at first base the last couple games. I did pinch hit on the 25th, but mostly starting at first base in the middle third of the order, which is nice. Brad Miller's been one of these guys all season that you love to have when he has a role. He filled in the outfield for a while, filling in at first base right now, filling in at third base every now and again as well. I think that Brad Miller if he has a consistent role, which currently he does, and I don't see a major reason why he'll lose that beyond a regular day off here or there, that he can be a pretty good addition to especially like a corner infield spot on a roster that utilizes that position. In those leagues that he has his multi-position eligibility between outfield, maybe even third base or second base, when he filled in a couple of those throughout the season, he could be useful in a daily moves league where you can put him on your bench and fill in on days that guys are getting those days off, especially through September. Those are going to happen more and more often, especially through your head-to-head playoffs, where you're going to need those bats, and you're not going to want to worry about filling a full lineup day in and day out. But in a weekly moves league, he interests me a little bit more than the counterpart, Ronald Torres, who's been playing third base. He was pretty much playing third base for a while now with Baum being so terrible, honestly. And I like Brad Miller a little bit better. Miller doesn't hurt that Miller just hit a bomb the other day. He's got 13 on the year, chip in 3 stolen bases. Not anything you're going to pick somebody up for, but Torres is nice to have because for the same reasons that Miller is nice, is that he's playing every day now. And there's not really a major reason he's going to stop doing that unless Baum takes back that spot and shows that he deserves it, but he has yet to do that. So I'm not too worried about that down the stretch. If it happens, he's an easy cut, not a big deal, but I think Miller's the one I'd be more interested in.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat there. I definitely like Brad Miller a lot more. Former St. Louis Cardinal great, Brad Miller. Actually had a really good year last year for the Cardinals, if I remember right.
So you're saying that a positional player, specifically somebody with outfield experience, moves to a new team and actually it does well? Yeah, it's really surprising.
A mind-blowing concept.
Sure. We're looking at you, Lane Thomas, you're up. All right, let's move over to the West, talk about the West for a second. Asdrubal Cabrera was placed on waivers by the Diamondbacks. That's the West part of this. A nice little attempt by the Diamondbacks to give Cabrera an opportunity to play for a team with playoff aspirations down the stretch, similar to what the Pirates did for Gregory Polanco recently. But unlike Polanco, someone actually claimed Cabrera off waivers, and he'll be joining the Cincinnati Reds as they fight for a wild card spot through September. How do you expect Cabrera to fit in with the rest of the Reds infield? And do you think he's worth an ad this weekend as he heads to Great American Ballpark?
So up until about a few hours ago, I assumed that Cabrera would basically just be a bench bat, maybe subbing in every so often, give Joey Votto some rest, give Mike Moustakas some rest, what have you. It turns out Mike Moustakas got hurt tonight on the night that we're recording this. He's got a right hip issue that Cabrera came and relieved him for. I think Cabrera is actually now lined up for a lot more playing time, at least as long as Moustakas is out for. I don't know if it's going to be an extended rest for Moustakas or anything like that, but even like you said, like giving players a little bit of a breather down the stretch. You have guys like Votto and Moustakas who aren't like the youngest anymore, and you want to rest those legs, especially if they're going to be in the playoffs. So I would expect Cabrera to get semi-regular playing time at both of the corner infield spots, but I still think that he's mostly at least just going to be a bench bat and probably won't have that much of an impact.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think he could get put into both corner spots, which really hurts my heart to see that Tyler Stevenson he hasn't really taken a lot of those first base reps recently, but to have another option at first base to spell Votto is, I don't like seeing that, because I really want Stevenson to continue to get those extra at bats, which he was for a long time and just has not. He's only started 2 out of the last 7 games at catcher, back in a Barnhart, obviously. In playing time, especially at the catcher position, we'll talk about a little bit later, is key, especially this 100%. Time of year. And with Suarez is basically a bench piece at this point in Cincinnati. Kyle Farmer starting shortstop. Amazing. And actually what's even more amazing about Farmer, obviously, is he has that catcher eligibility, at least in Yahoo as well. That's always an interesting.
It's always very funny. I always forget about that too, honestly. Like,
he has every position. He can play everywhere.
The superest of utility players.
Yes, exactly.
Man, oh man. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like at third base, you still have Eugenio Suarez as well. That's going to be a platoon split with Moustakas usually. And I don't know. Again, before Moustakas got hurt tonight, on the night that we're recording this, I just didn't really see that much playing time for Escobar, but Asdrubal Cabrera. I have Brewers on the brain, as usual. The other former Diamondback. But yeah, at this point, we'll see how long Moustakas is out for, if he's going to be out for an extended period or if it's just going to be a couple days of rest to get him right. And then I would evaluate at that point. But this is someone that I feel like you probably don't have to spend very much FAAB on if you do want him as a nice little backup piece.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So unfortunately, moving to some more COVID news, Kike Hernandez tested positive for the virus, and teammate Christian Arroyo was considered a close contact, which makes them both unavailable for Boston for a bit here. With Marwin Gonzalez being designated for assignment and recently signing with Houston, who do we think fills the opening for the Red Sox, and should we care once it comes to bidding time?
Yeah, I think this is a lot like Asdrubal Cabrera. The only difference here is that who Boston has filling in, at least at second base, is playing every day, or it has been. And that is Jonathan Araz, who's taken over every day second base duties for the Red Sox. And I'm assuming that he's going to stick there pretty much playing every day until one of Arroyo or Hernandez are cleared to return. The thing is, Boston is a potent lineup. I get that, but he's still batting ninth every day. And the one good thing about being in the ninth position on an offense in a lineup like Boston is I'd much rather see somebody batting ninth than eighth or seventh. They're going to have more opportunity to get hit in and score more runs than they would at the sixth or seventh or eighth hole, where they have the likes, of Verdugo and JD Martinez hitting them in after they get on base. So Rose does have a little bit of a hit tool. He hasn't really shown it that much in his line, but he does have that. He does have that ability. He did miss some time, obviously, with the PD suspension. He hasn't really come back at 110% that he could have had shown before that. But this is all about volume. If you need a middle infielder, if you are desperate for a second baseman, he's a guy you're going to be able to get for $1, $2, $3, exactly, maybe. And you put him in for your lineup, even for the first half of the week, or maybe the whole week, who knows? But it really comes down to your need. And he's the fourth or fifth guy on a contingency plan in my waterfall bids for that middle infield position. He's not really going to steal you a bunch of bases. He might get on base a couple times, might score a bunch of runs because he's with Boston, but I don't see him lighting up any fireworks for sure.
Yeah, nothing like that. He's not going to be a 5-category contributor by any means or anything like that. But so he's a really good example of the people that we talk about on In the Deep. And for me, like whenever I'm trying to analyze and figure out like a good hitter to target that's not heavily rostered on any teams or anything like that, is I have 3 O's that I like to follow. Is opportunity. So like how much playing time they're going to get. The offense, O, that it surrounds them. And then O for order, where they're batting in the batting order. So like you said, having that 9th spot and being right in front of all those prime hitters at the top of the lineup, it's going to be a better spot for someone like that. There is some draw here, but it's going to be only in the deepest of deep leagues for me.
The good thing is that Boston does have a full slate of games next week, which we'll touch on a little bit later. They've traveled to Tampa Bay for 4, and then they host Cleveland for 3, and then they host Tampa Bay for 3 more straight. So they don't have an off day until the 9th of that, the following week, the Thursday. And so then they have 6 more straight games. So they don't have a whole ton of off days. So I'm not saying he's going to be in the lineup all the way through until the White Sox or the Seattle series. But I expect at least Arroyo, since he did not test positive supposedly for COVID, that he'll be back first, and they will either platoon or Arroyo will take over a good chunk of that time as second basis. So
for sure.
Short-term fix.
Love it.
All right, Jordan, last one here, and then we'll move on to our next section. Brad Keller looks to be out for the rest of the season as the Royals placed him on the IL after he left Thursday's game with right shoulder discomfort. Talking to my inside Royals source, his name's Kevin Hastings. You might have heard of him.
Doesn't ring a bell.
We'll probably see Jacob Junis rejoin the rotation in Kansas City so they can keep their 6-man rotation going through September. In what format would you actually be interested in adding Junis down the stretch?
Okay, just before I answer this, I just have to ask you, did Kevin slip you a $5?
We were talking. Well, I was honestly. So I was looking at somebody else in that rotation for a different league, and I messaged Kevin. I'm like, "Hey, are they really going to keep their 6-man rotation?" And he's like, "Yeah, probably." And then 2 days later, this happened, and I'm like, "Are they still going to keep their 6-man rotation?" And then he's like, "Yeah, Jacob Junis, such and such in his last start AAA, he's probably going to get called up and move into the rotation."
Curses.
Dang. Yeah, curse you 6-man rotation. But yeah.
The bane of many fantasy baseball players.
Especially this time of year. Come on.
Yeah. We need that volume right now. Come on, man. Yeah, I was actually pretty high on Junis earlier in the year when he had a very brief stint back in May where he was a starter. Much to the chagrin of Nick Pollock, I tried to tell him that Junis might actually be okay, and Nick was like, "Just stop it! Stop trying to make Jake Junis happen. It's not going to work." And then he subsequently blew up against Cleveland, and Nick obviously
who knew Nick Pollock knew what he was talking about.
When it comes to pitchers, who would have thought? Who would have thunk it? But yeah, so he got moved to the bullpen, still got lit up quite a bit, and then he was never able to find his groove. He got sent back to AAA eventually, and then got blown up there in one start. After which he was put on the IL for an undisclosed reason. Don't know exactly what was going on there, obviously. But then he was activated recently. He pitched in 3 games at the Arizona Complex League, to get back up to speed. And then he's appeared twice for the Royals AAA squad since then and has pitched a combined 7.1 scoreless innings with 6 strikeouts and just 2 walks in 2 appearances. So I think, sure, he might be worth an add in some very deep leagues, like 15-team plus with a lot of bench spots, but I just think that due to the lack of volume just in general and needing to get built back up after the IL stint, I would probably fade him in, like I said, anything like 15-team plus in AL only leagues. That said, because I was on the train earlier this year for a little bit, I'm still rooting for him personally, just as a fan. As like the new cutter that he showcased seems like it was interesting and like a good in-betweener between his fastball, which is honestly very underwhelming, and then his slider, which was insanely good. I think like the one really niche upside with him is if you have a league where you can slot him in as like in a relief pitcher spot.
Oh yeah.
That eligibility, he could provide some nice volume and then possibly a win if he can somehow get up to that 5 innings pitched mark. But again, I probably wouldn't move in on him unless I can confirm that he's set to face like a pretty weak offense.
Yeah, and then I'm going to look this up because he did pretty good, like you said, in his last outing, Junis, which would, if he stays on track, I'll be curious to see if they just call him up and they put him right into the rotation based on when he started last.
Mm-hmm. I think the most pitches that he got up to when he was starting was like around like 86, something like that. And then after that, he blew up. So
yeah, so he went 4 1/3 on the 25th. And so if you look at Kansas City's schedule moving forward, he would go into 1, 2, 3, 4. He looks, if he were to get called up in line with his rest, he'd be facing Cleveland to start next week. So otherwise they got the White Sox after that. So you hate to see that. And then at Baltimore the week after, or the series after that. So you'd hope he'd get the Cleveland series to start. You have to keep to see what Kansas City has in plan for that spot in the rotation.
I can only assume that they're going to send Edward Olivares down. Also,
wait, that hasn't happened already?
I'm just constantly refreshing my Twitter feed, expecting it.
One of these days, I think they're just going to trade him. If they run out of options, they'll trade him. And then the other team will trade him back. And somehow he'll get a minor league contract and he'll have to...
They'll reset his option. It's like hitting the reset button. Yeah.
Oh, that's just embarrassing.
At that point, then the manipulation is just out in the open. He would file a lawsuit. He would have to at that point, right?
So back in the day when I used to wait tables, in Massachusetts, it's one of those states that has you get $2.13 an hour, so you don't really care about your hourly wage. And so I used to have a boss who would be like, "Yeah, you can pick up any shifts you want as long as you don't go into overtime." So I'd work a double every Saturday whenever I possibly could.
Yep.
And but the way I wouldn't go into overtime is every time I go up to the computer to put an order in, I would go on break. I'd go on unpaid break, and then I'd just keep working. And then I'd come back to the computer and come off of unpaid break and put in the order. And so I would work a 14-hour day, 15-hour day, but my timestamp would print out like 4 feet long. Yeah. And it would show that I worked probably a total of 4 to 4.5 hours. And so this is what I associate with Edward Olivares' time manipulation. He's played all this time, but when you really bring it down, he's only played like 2 days at a time, sometimes only 1 day at a time. And it's just, it's really frustrating.
It's incredibly frustrating. I'm sorry that you felt like you had to do that just to make a living. That is absurd, my dude. I worked in restaurants. I was never really a server. I was the backup bartender occasionally. I was very heavy handed.
I was much younger. I had a lot more energy. So we'll leave it at that.
You didn't have kiddos running around. That helps too.
Those were more than a few years away.
Oh man.
All right, I think that will do it for our news and notes section of the pod. As always, we do try to focus on news that might affect your FAAB considerations this coming Sunday. But as we're now in the stretch run for the 2021 season, we know that you don't want to miss any of your MLB action. You should stay up to date on the latest and greatest by checking out the weekly Breaking, a baseball news podcast on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Host Tim Jackson, who contributes over at Pitcher List and Baseball Prospectus, and TC Zenka, contributor at Pitcher List and MLB Trade Rumors, run through all the critical roster moves and injury updates likely to affect contenders while diving deep into one big idea for the week. Tim and TC answer the most pressing questions for the stretch run, like, are the Padres really going to miss the playoffs? How is it possible that the Phillies are going to finish exactly at 500 again? Breaking baseball isn't a simple task, but Tim and TC are here to help you do it. Follow Breaking on the Twitter for all future episodes at BreakingPodPL and tune in every Thursday with Tim and TC. All right, Jordan, since I got you here, we mentioned at the top of the show, of course, you are a co-host for In the Deep. It comes out every Monday. I mean, the reason I didn't do a read for your show is you're here. It'd be double dipping here. So we're going to let you talk a little bit about, what you do over at In the Deep. Again, every Monday with Christopher Weber. Your podcast husband, I believe, is the title.
I am. He's my baseball husband. I am his baseball wife.
There you go.
That's how that goes.
Make sure they get the titles correct. And so I'm going to talk to you about why. Like, why? For all those who don't know,
why?
For all those who don't know, like, obviously the Pitcher List Podcast Network blew up in a big way back in March. Over 20 different podcasts, and the way it came about, it was like Nick was just like, "Hey, who wants to do a podcast? Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll decide whether or not it's right for Pitcher List at this moment." So you guys decided you wanted to talk about, like, players that nobody wants, like the misfit toys of fantasy baseball.
The Island of Misfit Boys.
There you go. New show title right there. Tell me, what is it about the deep player pool that attracts you to that group of players?
It lets you get like really granular because there's just like a huge abundance of choice. Also, like it feels like in deeper leagues, it forces you to be more creative in how you construct your roster and allows more options. I mean, there's many like times where I'm in like a 12 team or even like 10 team league where we only have 25 to 30 roster spots or whatever it may be. And you're only looking at like the top 360 players at most, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy finding that value post like 450 and beyond. I think that's really fun. And it also is a really good exercise in identifying people that maybe are really underappreciated in general by the community in terms of their production and people that might be really good breakout targets for your shallower leagues in future years. Yeah, I think that's the most exciting part of it. And again, it just requires you to be so creative with your roster in order to squeeze out as much value as you can. Because again, there's so many people that you're just never going to roster in a 12-team league that you get to roster in these leagues. And that's what makes it really fun.
Yeah, you're not even talking about stashes either. We're not talking about prospect stashes. No. These are active players that can actually make a difference in their own way throughout, depending on the format, obviously, that you're playing in. Again, these are players that, as we saw, are 20% rostered or less in ESPN Yahoo, which typically will, translate over to CBS, I think, as well. Yeah. It's pretty common. So what are you doing to convince yourself to roster one of these players when literally no one else does, or 80% of the leagues out there want to?
So I'm going to drop the same thing that I did before. Is I usually, especially when I'm looking at hitters, it's looking at the 3 O's: opportunity, offense, and order. So if they're getting opportunities, they're getting those plate appearances, they're playing pretty much every day. That's always 1+ right there. Because obviously, and that's the thing too, is if you're a really good defender, we know that you're going to be getting that playing time. So like we do somewhat, even though it is fantasy baseball that values defense almost zero, we do look at how good of a defender some players are just because we know that they're going to get that just the consistent playing time.
Sure.
Again, like the offense that you're surrounded by, really great. If you have people that are really good hitting in front of you or behind you, you're either going to be able to get quite a few RBIs or quite a few runs in comparison to your counterparts on other teams. And then order, obviously, like where you're hitting in the order, the same deal there. It's all stuff that we look at when we're looking at players on the offensive side. And just in general, between both pitchers and hitters, it's a lot of looking at players whose outputs are underperforming their inputs. So what I mean by that is if a hitter is fairly consistently creating like 90th percentile max exit velocity, but isn't hitting for a great average or hitting a lot of home runs or anything like that, I'm going to dig into why. Like it could be that just their overall contact rate is depressed. Their hard hit percentage is really low. So maybe they're not hitting the ball that hard very often. Or maybe they just have a really high ground ball rate and their launch angle is really low. So I just really want to dig into that granular aspect of their production and why it looks the way it does. And I also want to look and see if they're trending in a good direction as well. Something like rolling charts, which is something that Scott Schuss swears by and has taught me. And he did a really good presentation on it for PitchCon this past year, which should be on the Pitcher List YouTube channel.
Yeah, go look that up. It's a great presentation Scott did. It's on Pitcher List, the YouTube channel for Pitcher List.
Yeah, it's really good. So stuff like that, like you want to see, okay, is their average launch angle trending in a better direction? Yes, they're hitting the ball really hard, but if they're lifting the ball more, that's going to lead to more power, more hits, and hopefully more home runs. So stuff like that is stuff that I really look into because there's plenty of diamonds in the rough to be found.
Yeah, I think it's good to, you talk about obviously those expected stats and figuring out why the outputs aren't matching the inputs. And we talk about this all the time, especially with FAAB, like you don't want to be bidding on production that's already happened. Exactly. You want to bid on production that you hope or expect will come, preferably sooner rather than later. But the beauty of looking for these types of players that their outputs aren't matching their inputs, like you say, is they're not going to be that expensive because a good majority of people aren't doing that. They're like, all right, I'm going to look at, Scott was on the show a month or two ago, and he said the same thing. And I'll just echo what he said, or I'll paraphrase, like, you can't just search like what the production the players have been doing the last 14 days, the last 30 days, because that has almost no bearing as to what they're going to do the next 14 days or the next 30 days, unless there's some trends. There's actually significant changes that they've made in their inputs. Yeah. So when we see players, Naquin's a bad example now because he's doing really well again, filling in for Jesse Winker. But
what I would think about is like Joey Votto. People were so down on Joey Votto earlier this year. They thought he was broken. And now look at him.
Oh, yeah.
Like the past month, he's just been an absolute monster. And if anyone dropped him in any of my leagues, I was always trying to get him. Mm-hmm. Like there's so many people like that you can just see that the talent is there. Like you can see the ceiling and like what they're possible, like what their potential is, but there's obviously a stark difference between people actually being able to make the changes and reach that potential and people who just continue to do the same thing over and over again.
What are you expecting to get out of players in this range, especially this time of year, right? This time of year, if a player is still under 20% rostered, they have a large enough sample size, unless they just got called up or unless they just coming back from an injury or something like that. What are you hoping to get from these types of players through the stretch run?
So there's like incredibly rare cases where you get someone who can contribute across the board. Like I'm thinking, it's mostly guys who have breakouts early in the season. You're not really going to find someone who's going to break out like at the very end of the season in most cases. For me, I'm mostly looking for people who are going to help me in the areas that I'm struggling while not absolutely tanking my ratios in the other areas. So if I really need batting average, I want someone who's going to get that for me, but I'm going to probably throw them in a slot like second base that isn't going to produce a ton of power anyways. Someone like Tommy LaStella, who like over the past 2 weeks is hitting like 315. I need help there. So I actually rostered Tommy LaStella in TGFBI, stuff like that. And again, like you could have someone who has a ton of empty power and is hitting maybe a home run a week, but if they're hitting for a 220, 210 average, and they're going to tank your batting average and all your other ratios on the offensive side, like it might not be to try to like get that person. I'm not expecting the world from any of the people that I pick up off the waiver wire, especially at the end of the year. But again, like I'm chasing people down in leagues and like stolen bases and runs and things like that. So I'm trying to find the people who can provide that speed, especially right now. And I was targeting guys like Nicky Lopez. It was like I know that's a big name for you over here. Like, between Kevin being a Royals fan and just
I've had Lopez on my TGFBI team for a month and a half now, but he hasn't done anything this week.
That's going to happen though.
Of course. He goes off for 13 stolen bases in in 2 days somehow. Of course, everybody's going to go pick him up. And of course, he's not going to steal a base. I think he stole one. But
the other person that I picked up was Jorge Mateo because he was getting a ton of playing time for the Orioles. And then he got hurt.
Yep.
No, I didn't even know you were wearing a Mateo.
No, sorry. I was pointing my back because he hurt his back. But he's back today. Stole a base today. He stole a base today. So that's it was helpful. Yes.
Wait, did I take him out of the lineup? I might have taken him out of the lineup. Oh no.
He was hurt.
Anyways, yeah, that's true. He was hurt. But yeah, so he is someone that I also targeted because I just need speed really badly. That's one thing that I'm very bad at, I think, is I very consistently am very just awful at drafting steals.
I find that this is the time of year, though, those steals do come out of the woodwork. Like, I was for a long time, I was writing the Need for Speed column over at Pitcher List. And last year was a bad example. Obviously, it's only 2 months long. But I do find that it is a lot easier in August and September specifically to find those stolen bases because you're starting to get these teams that are realizing, do what you want to do. Just do what you want to do. You have the Rangers of the world who already stole bases. Were already stealing bases before, and they're just continuing to do so now. And then you have other teams that are, all of a sudden you have the Yankees who are stealing every other bag that they possibly can when they were doing nothing at the beginning of the year. So you have the Tyler Wades of the world come through.
Now, Andrew Velasquez? Is that who it is? Yep. He's been playing shortstop a ton. Like he's got a few stolen bases over the past 2 weeks.
I mentioned this on the show so many times, especially when Cano came over to the Yankees. Oh, great. So now the stolen bases are gone for Robinson. No, for Rugno Odor. And they're going to be gone for Odor because he's with the Yankees and the Yankees don't run. And somebody was talking to me about this, like teams either run when they have to or when they have no other choices. And the Yankees had no other choices for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden they're realizing, hey, we need to do something. And now they're on a 13-game win streak or however long. Win streak. Yeah. So maybe they continue to do what they're doing.
It helps that Giancarlo Stanton is on an absolute tear too.
4 days straight?
Madman.
4 home runs straight. Yeah.
Absolute madman. So good.
I traded for Stanton in my home dynasty league at the deadline. And the team I traded him from, I play this week. So that felt good to know that if nothing else, that he wasn't doing it against me this week.
It's extra sweet to have him just go off against the team that you It's extra sweet. That's a nice little rub your nose in it situation.
They're not looking for a playoff spot this year, but so they probably don't mind. They probably don't mind tanking a little bit anyway to get the better draft pick for next season. But
that's fair.
So some of these guys, though, that we're talking about, these are good players, but they just it just takes a long time for the vast majority of the public to catch up with that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that some of these like really good players take so long to be caught by the general public?
I think a lot of it is just like the attention span that you have within your league. It's a lack of engagement. And that's not a bad thing. There's different levels of like how serious you're going to take your home fantasy leagues and things like that too. We're obviously very plugged in all the time because we have to be, right? We're going to hear about things well before anyone else. So it really could be a combination of things, whether it's just fatigue, because the season is incredibly long. Like it is very difficult to stay plugged in for the entire season. Burnout's a real thing. So there's a lot of people that probably just get like a little bit disconnected from it because they have other interests or they just don't have the energy for it anymore. And then a lot of times, and this includes me, managers fall into a state of analysis paralysis when it comes to who they should add or drop in leagues. And I think this is really true when you have a super limited number of roster or like bench spots to work with. And then also how early it is in the season, because like early in the season, if you have like draft a team that you think is going to be really good, maybe someone's a little bit cold and there's someone on the wire that's having a good start, you get worried about having FOMO out but what if I drop this person? Yep. And then they go and just pop off on someone else's team. I don't want to quit on them too early, but honestly,
we're past that. Yeah, we're past that point in the season.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people very often are a little bit too precious. Like maybe someone performed really well for you in the first half, like case in point, Adolis Garcia, who's like very good in the first half of the season, kind of trailed off the second half, but I know he's still like pretty much universally rostered in TGFBI. A lot of people are still putting him in starting lineups, including me, but I probably should have moved on.
Yeah, Yermin Mercedes was a good example of that as well. When he was still up, like I held on to him long past the wagging of the finger he got after hitting that home run.
The end of your mania.
Yeah. But I dropped him finally when he got demoted, obviously. But that was a good example. Somebody dropped him in a main event shortly before that happened. It was more of a challenge drop. It was just like, hey, I think this is as good as it's going to get. And that's it. And you look at him like, how did somebody drop him at this point? Obviously that worked out. So it was a good time. But that's what I'm saying. If you are confident about the future production you're going to get out of somebody is not going to be worth the roster spot. Doesn't matter what they did the last 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, since the beginning of the season. None of that matters. No. All that matters is what you think they're going to do the rest of the season. This goes back to the preseason. Like you do all of this research and you do all this prep and you're like, you have the process that you follow. You got to trust that. So but that process doesn't end at the end of March. That process has to continue throughout the season. So if you use that process in the middle of the season and that process says, hey, this guy's not going to do anything for my team the rest of the season or even the next month, I have a better use for this roster spot. And you have to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't just like at the end of the draft just be like, my work here is done. Perfect.
Unless it's a best ball or
yeah, just there's just so much. Just again, like that's the difference between, playing fantasy baseball and playing fantasy football. It's like 16 game sample as opposed to 162 game sample. It is just such a slog, honestly, to like, especially paying attention to a ton of leagues. I got into way too many leagues this year.
How many leagues are in this year?
11.
Okay. And are they all active or any of them draft and hold best balls or are they all active?
They're all active.
See, there you go. Yep.
That's the hard part is I just got into way too many leagues. I like a lot of them that I'm in. I really enjoy them, but it's just like for a while, I just didn't have the attention span. I let some of them go a little bit. Honestly, it's just, it's really hard to stay engaged for that whole season. Sure. I think that's one of the biggest things too, is because especially if you're at the bottom half of your league, there's not a ton of incentive to keep trying, especially later in the year. It's just
especially
really
if you are a person that does football or if you're in your case where you have 11 leagues and you're like, I could spend a little bit of extra time on this league that I'm in third place, or I could spread out all my time evenly. I don't think so.
Especially later in the year. So like with people that have like late season breakouts, or maybe they get called up and they finally get their shot and they're doing really well. Again, those rostership numbers don't really reflect like actually how good that person is, because half of your league is going to be super just detached at that point. It's natural, and I don't blame people for feeling that way, obviously.
Same goes for FAAB, though. Same goes for FAAB at this time of year. It's just not who's quick in those first to act leagues, sure. But like in FAAB, not only does everybody have less money, but half your league, maybe a third of your league isn't even spending at all. So all those bids go down. Simple as that. So you can do dollar days and you can still get some of the guys that you're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's really good. And if everybody, if you're not already, you're missing out, but you should be listening to Jordan and Schwebzy over on In the Deep. Comes out on Monday mornings, or check them out. You guys do a live stream of all your prep as well.
Yeah. So you can actually, if you want to come hang out with us as we're very last minute with all of our preparation. And we'll say that it's because we want to be really up to date with all of our info, but it's also because we're just the biggest procrastinators in the world.
But it's nice. Everybody gets an insight. If they want, they can hang out with you guys and see exactly how the music's made.
Yeah. It's 3 hours of us procrastinating even more. And then it's an hour and a half of us sitting there silently on stream as we actually prep for the podcast. So it's nice because we get to interact with people like both from the Pitcher List Discord community that come and hang out. And we've just had like occasionally some random folks pop in and just start talking to us, seeing that we're talking about baseball. It's been really cool. So if you want to get like real time interaction with us and get answers to questions in real time, we're streaming that every Sunday night, usually around 9 p.m. Eastern. Is when we start and kick that off. So feel free to join us there over at twitch.tv/Schwebzy. And that's SHWEBSI.
Nice. And of course, you follow the pod on the Twitter. You put up, usually every week, you put up a notification to everybody that you're doing the stream as well. So
yes,
check that out.
For sure.
All right, let's get into the meat of the episode, Jordan. Let's make some recommendations. Let everybody know some of those players. A lot of these players are going to be in that less than 20% rostership that you usually talk about as well. Some of them a little bit on the lower format side as well. So some 10 or 12 team options in here as well. But let's start with our hitters. We'll start with power. I'm going to let you lead us off. Who do you have your eye on that could jump you up in the home run RBI categories?
So I went with Jake Myers from Houston, currently 98% rostered in the main event, 54% rostered in TGFBI, and then 16% rostered on Yahoo. So Kyle Tucker came back, which with that return, we were expecting potentially for Jake Myers to get bumped after his return. But subsequently, Chas McCormick just got moved to the IL with a left hand issue. So he's going to be out for at least 10 days. Myers continues his run in center field because of that. And the Astros offense is one of the best offenses in the league, with Alex Bregman also returning from the IL recently. So that's going to bolster that too. Myers, with that offense around him, should get ample opportunity over the next week and a half or so to accrue some RBIs and hopefully show off some more of the pop and speed that he had in AAA this year. He had 16 home runs and 10 stolen bases over 63 games. So that's a real good pace. He should have, I would guess, probably another week or so of games at the very least. And while it doesn't sound like that's very much, that's 20% of our remaining season for fantasy baseball, which is a huge chunk.
It's a good chunk.
Yeah. So I feel comfortable like with Myers' skill set, specifically the fact that he could get you both stolen bases and home runs. Like I would be fine spending like 8 to 10% of what you have left in FAAB dollars for the season this week, as I don't think he's going to be like that sought after, at least in the shallower leagues outside of NFBC.
I think that, yeah, he's the type of guy that like, if you haven't picked him up by now, that you're probably not as interested. So you probably should be, especially since he's the only true center fielder that they really have on the roster. Tucker can fill in, but Myers is really, it's going to have that. I hear this at least on a bunch of pods, and you see it in writing, like fantasy doesn't care about defense until it keeps the player in the game. And so Myers is going to be in the game because his defense is going to keep him there. It's going to keep him in the lineup. We always say that if you can get a piece of the Houston lineup, you should, even if you are in the bottom, even if he is in the bottom third of the lineup on a regular basis. But that's the key term, was regular basis.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like with him too, McCormick's going to be on the IL for at least 10 days. We don't know if that stretch could be longer. Like he might have a setback while he's coming back, and like hand injuries like that make it very hard usually to swing a bat, and they're very easily re-injured, it feels like. Mm-hmm. So there is a possibility that Myers gets even more of a run, or if he just continues playing really well and hitting well, he might just get the run for the rest of the season.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I like that call out. All right. So I'm going to stay in the state. I'm going to stay in Texas, go over to the Rangers. I'm going to give a shout out to Nick Solak, who just got recently called back up to the Rangers. 88% still rostered in the main event, 71% in TGFBI. So 15 percenters not readily available, but your 12 teamers still about 51% rostered across online championships, and then 24% in Yahoo as of right now. So yeah, I'm willing to be hurt again with Solak. You know, he is a fan favorite at the beginning of the season, and he did absolutely nothing. But he was just one of those types of guys that you're like, these are the types of guys we're talking about. Like, you did a process, you had a process, and you're like, I cannot drop him yet. I cannot drop him yet. Okay, fine, I can drop him. And still, like I said, he's 88% rostered in the main event. So obviously there's still plenty of people out there that never had that moment with him, and they just held on to him. They stashed him, hoping he'd come back up and play on a regular basis. And he's had spots. He's come up and down. But here's the thing right now, and I'm going to quote Dave Swan, who talked about this in the Batter's Box article over at Pitcher List earlier this morning. Coming into today, he had not struck out. Now, he struck out today, which I had to keep looking at the box score while we were recording this to make sure I had this accurate. But he did strike out today. But what else he did today is he had another hit. And so he has a modest 6-game hit streak going on. 3 of the last 5 games, or now 3 of the last 6 games, have resulted in multi-hit performances. So he's seeing the ball better. And as Dave Swan pointed out, he's swinging outside the zone less, so 10% less than he was before his demotion. He obviously knows he needed to make some kind of adjustments to get himself a better output. As you said, he needed to change his input so that his output would, match. The other concern though is, which not something Solak ever did a whole lot of anyway, but he hasn't taken a walk yet either. For the season, he's only at, less than 5.5% walk rate, 22% K rate. So the K rate wasn't really an issue to begin with, but the fact that he's still not doing it at all looks good. And he already has a homer since coming back. He's stolen a base since coming back, which isn't really what we're getting him for. It's nice. He's in Texas, so I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. Texas likes to run, and even with players that you don't expect to run, I'm looking at you, Nate Lowe. And so that's a nice little chip in. That's nice to have. So second base, third base, outfield eligible in Yahoo. NFBC still second and outfield eligible. So still slots into that middle infield slot. Outfield as well. So I can see both Meyer and So being bid on for the same roster spot. And we talk about this a lot too, especially when you're low in FAAB. You really want to find 2 or 3 guys at a position or to fill a hole that you'd be happy with, so that you don't have to spend $25. You can spend $5 on all of them and be happy with whoever ends up on your roster. Solak fits that bill for me. I mean, if I got Solak or Myers, maybe Solak's right below Myers in those 12 teamers that they're both available on my contingency. I don't get Myers because he's swinging hot bat and everybody's starting to catch up, and I get Solak instead. So be it.
It's a very good backup bid. I also will say, just because we're on the topic of Texas and we're going to continue to be on the topic of Texas, I just really want them to call up Sam Huff so I can watch this man hit like 530-foot bombs. What's the point in keeping him back?
You want to see him hit home runs for the Rangers that land in the Astros Stadium, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want him to hit the Crawford boxes from the Rangers Stadium.
I don't know. I got nothing. I want to say it's because time manipulation, which is probably fine what it is, but they just had a whole spew of COVID instances in Texas as well. And that's one of the reasons why next guy we're going to talk about, Leos Taveras, is up now rather than probably after the September call-up time. I don't know. It would be nice to see.
Yeah, let's move on to him then.
Yeah, so we're moving to our speed category. And I want to bring up that this Leotis Taveras was on my... So when I did my Need for Speed article, I had the same rules as you guys have on In the Deep. It's 20% rostered or less in Yahoo, and they got to steal bases. But those were the only 2 things I was looking for. And Taveras made the list so often he wasn't getting picked up because all anybody thought he was going to be doing was stealing bases. And honestly, that's all he really needed to do as far as I was concerned. And he did it a lot at the end of last year. He's very readily available across any kind of format. 2% rostered in the main event, 7% TGFBI, 7% in the online championship. He was another preseason favorite. I think he was going within the top 200 in a lot of different drafts after, especially how he ended last season with all those stolen bases. He's put up much better numbers this year in AAA after he was sent down quickly. Since he's been up, he's already stolen a base, though he hasn't gotten a hit. And I double checked the box score. I'm pretty sure he still hasn't gotten a hit, which is only nice because it'll keep the bidding down. And he could easily be a contingency bid that you'd be happy with, or at least I'd be happy with, especially if you're looking for stolen bases. Like I mentioned, Texas likes to run. They've liked to run all season long. They've been 6th in stolen bases all year. And in the month of August, they're ranked 7th, with a lot of other teams jockeying around them. Seattle coming down, San Diego coming down, the Yankees going up, Cleveland going up. But Texas has stayed steady. So they, regardless of who's on the roster, if they think you have a shot, they're probably going to let you run. And you hear it all the time too, stolen bases, half of stolen bases is about intent. And so if the Rangers have intent, I think you guys say this a lot, Jordan. So it's a big call out there. So Taveras will be somebody in the league, and I have at least one league where I know I have stolen bases is the category I can make the most leeway in. I will be targeting Taveras on Sunday for sure, especially since I know he's available.
Absolutely. Love it.
So who do you got for stolen bases coming into this coming week?
So I actually went with 2 power speed guys, I just realized, that have a little bit of both in their profile. I went with Bradley Zimmer. So he's 61% rostered in TGFBI, 2% rostered between ESPN and Yahoo, both. I think that Justin Mason is probably the most notorious and commonly known like person who is super outspoken and stumping for Bradley Zimmer, the Bradley Zimmer truther of the fantasy baseball community. And I get it. The tools are incredibly loud. He's got a ton of pop in his bat if he can find it, tons of raw power, and then he's also incredibly fast. And surprisingly, he's been pretty serviceable in the average department while threatening to go deep or steal a bag on literally any given day. He's currently playing, like I said, opportunity is a huge thing. He's playing every single day in the Cleveland lineup. So you can definitely do worse if you're taking a flyer on someone at this point in the season. Someone that's this widely available is going to be really hard to find. That can, again, like I said, he's not going to be like just an empty, like no power and just steal bases or vice versa. He can do a little bit of both. So that's a really valuable player to snag off the waiver wire.
Yeah, Kevin mentioned Zimmer was his choice last week as well. Pretty sure his name has come up a couple times. It's just one of those that we're talking about when I was talking to you earlier about like, why does it take so long for these guys to get picked up? Zimmer, I think there's just like that post prospect, hype crash, if you will, with Zimmer, who obviously has that, pedigree and has that history. First round pick, 21st overall pick for Cleveland in 2014. Obviously hasn't had an opportunity or just hasn't lived up to that pedigree that he was drafted at, but he's got 3 stolen bases since the middle of the month. He's got a couple of, and 2 of those were combo meals. So it's always nice to have that kind of production when you're just trying to get stolen bases. If you get some chip in home runs, by all means.
Love it.
All right. And I'll give a shout out before you get to your next guy to Jorge Mateo. I'm not going to go into detail. We talked about him a couple weeks ago. He's back and he stole a base today. So he did hurt his back. He stole a base today. Look at him. I know they got Jermaine Jones over in Baltimore playing second base as well, but Mateo has game-changing speed, and he should be somebody that you are targeting if you still need stolen bases. And he's hitting. Like, that's nuts as well. I don't know if he's still on his hit streak, but he's had quite a long streak when he got signed over in Baltimore, and they're just letting him literally run loose.
I'm actually checking here. So since he joined Baltimore, he has not gotten a hit in 2 games out of, I don't even know how many are in this range. It's too big for me to count. Just
exactly.
Off the top of my head. Yeah, he's been getting on base with regularity. It's been very impressive. His walk rate is super low, but the fact that he's hitting reasonably well, like since he joined the Orioles, he's hitting, 356? Yeah, it's absurd. So yeah, getting on base that much, and then obviously just the elitist of elite speed.
Yeah,
definitely worth it.
All right, we'll move on to our opportunity section then. Guys that have good matchups coming up. They're walking into a lot of extra playing time that they might not have had before, maybe added some positional flexibility. Before we do that, I'm going to give some notes on the upcoming schedule that I think are worth keeping an eye on when you're making your bids, or maybe when you're trying to figure out which players should go in what order on your FAAB list. So there are more than a few teams that have a 7-game slate this coming week, including Boston, Tampa Bay, Detroit, Atlanta, Milwaukee, Colorado, San Francisco, Washington, and the New York Mets. So Washington and the Mets have a doubleheader on Saturday, which gives them their 7 days. So they are both off during the week. Washington off on Thursday and the Mets off on Monday. So they will have a game missing from the first slate. And if you're in an NFBC league where you switch over, you can change out your rosters on, or at least your hitters on Friday, know that they do have a day off beginning half of the week, but they do have a doubleheader on Saturday, which is nice. They get those extra at-bats in the second half of your week. There's only one team that has a 5-game slate, and that is the White Sox of Chicago. So keep an eye on that for the first half of the week. It should be easy enough to fill those spots if you need it, unless you just have a full stack of White Sox on your team.
Yeah, just a quick note on that too is also that if you have a lineup like on NFBC where you're able to switch batters first and second half of the week, they do have a full weekend slate of games. So they do play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you will be able to get the full run there. So the first half of the week, maybe they're fades, but yeah, I would say that the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you can toss them back in there for that.
All right. And then always a target to Colorado. They will be away out of Denver for the first 3 games of the week in Texas as they head back home for the final 4-game series against Atlanta. So you will get the 4-game slate in Colorado, especially if you are targeting any Atlanta players as well. And they have an off day on Monday, but they don't have another off day until September 13th. So that's 2 straight 7-game weeks. They don't have an off day this coming Monday. They have a full slate of games this coming week and the week after. So that if you're looking for extra at-bats to fill in those holes, keep an eye on the Colorado options that are on your wire. There are 3 National League teams that head to American League, so they'll get the extra designated hitter in their lineups, at least for a couple games. Pittsburgh goes to Chicago to face the White Sox for 2 games. The Rockies, aforementioned Rockies, have 3 games in Texas against the Rangers, Monday through Wednesday, and the Cubs have 2 games at Minnesota on their Tuesday, Wednesday slate. And then there are a couple of teams on the other side of that in the American League that lose their designated hitter traveling to the National League stadiums. Seattle over the weekend faces Arizona for 3 games. Houston travels to San Diego over the weekend for 3. And then the Tigers face off against the Reds in Cincinnati for 3 across the weekend as well. So just something to keep an eye on as far as you might lose some at-bats from a designated hitter, or your pitcher might get pulled a little bit earlier than you like because they are now in a National League park. So with all that in mind, Jordan, who are you looking at? Is there anybody that you're looking at that might have a good opportunity ahead of themselves moving forward?
So I actually sniped one from you that I did notes after. I picked him up in TGFBI a few weeks ago. He's 100% rostered in main events and in TGFBI, and then also 71% in the online championship. But that's Jorge Alfaro. So he's mostly just been playing outfield for Miami since the trade deadline after they got rid of Adam Duvall and sent him back to Atlanta. But again, Alfaro is mostly known and was previously mostly just a catcher and has the 3rd most plate appearances, like you wrote down here, since the All-Star break, which is huge. So there's something that I like to call like the reverse Schwebzy curse, which happened with literally the entire Marlins outfield right after the trade deadline, because every single person who was regularly starting in that outfield looked really good after the trade deadline, and it happened immediately after Schwebzy knocked the Marlins for trading away their only really good hitting outfielder in Adam Duvall. And Alfaro is no exception to this. I was actually able to nab him for next to nothing a few weeks ago as my second catcher in TGFBI behind the absolute madman, Sal Perez, who's been insane. And that was mostly in an attempt to prop up my batting average. And since the trade deadline, he's hit .295 with 3 stolen bases and is rocking a currently 6-game hitting streak, which is a heck of a contribution that you can get from your second catcher spot. So someone with that sort of positional versatility, if he's achieved that positional eligibility, is super nice to roster on your teams. And I would absolutely chase him in your shallower leagues too if you have a second catcher spot.
Yeah, catcher, you're either getting one of those guys at the top that you're not going to lose, like Posey or the Zalprez and what have you, or you're just trying to tread water. If nothing else, you just want some. It's like you get to a point where, would I rather take the 0 or would I rather put this guy in? Yeah. And hopefully you can find a guy like Alfaro, even in your at least in your shallower leagues. As you mentioned, he's pretty rostered across the board in 15 teamers, especially 2 catcher 15 teamers.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm going to shine a light on a Pittsburgh Pirate of all players, Michael Chavis, who was brought up to Pittsburgh somewhat recently, widely available. Again, I'm scraping the bottom here because I'm looking for those guys that not only are less than 20%, but we're talking 0% rostered in main event, 7% rostered in TGFBI. I don't know why. I'm actually associating the fact that he's rostered in 7% of TGFBI to the teams that have stopped paying attention and might still have him on the roster for when he was in Boston.
100%.
Because he's 0%. Because he's 0% rostered in online championships as well. 15, 12 teamers doesn't matter. He's out there. Take a look. And he's playing now that he's up in Pittsburgh. They're letting him play every day. He is multi-positional eligible in most formats. Until today, he was hitting at the top of the lineup, second or first, and he batted, I believe, fifth today. And he played right field, which was different. He'd been playing second base for the Pirates the last couple games. But with Gregory Polanco being designated for assignment, which was weird, to be honest, because everything I heard about that was, we want to do right by him and send him out on waivers so that he could play for a contender for the rest of the year. He didn't get picked up, so he was still in the lineup, which was fine. But if that's really your intention, why did you DFA him? Yeah, it is. Maybe he'll get picked up somewhere else. Who knows? But as far as Chavis goes, I love the fact that he plays multiple positions and he's going to get a good number of at-bats, because why would Pittsburgh not let him play every single day, exactly, especially with Polanco gone? Now, they called up Cole Tucker back up, and I expect Tucker to play a little bit of second base. Tucker did come in for Chavis today, and to be honest, I don't know why. I haven't been able to figure out why. I don't know if it was just a defensive replacement. I hope it wasn't an injury, because then all of this is trash, and you can ignore everything I'm saying. But if he's in the lineup, Chavis can bring a little bit of stability, especially, and he can volume himself into some counting stats for you down the stretch, I think, for Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh doesn't exactly have a tough schedule moving forward. They have a couple of series against Miami, so they'll have a couple of good pitchers in there. But for the most part, they do have an opportunity ahead of themselves to, at least the top of their lineup, can volume their way into some extra stats.
Love it. Yeah, Chavis, again, there's not many other people that you're going to be finding much value out of from that Pittsburgh roster. It's a pretty anemic offense for the most part, but Chavis is someone that does have a lot of pop in his bat.
Yeah, so, when he wants to. He's got to show it on a regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Do we want to talk about some potential picks for wins and Ks?
I think we should move on to our pitchers. Yeah, I think that's a good call there.
Do you want to leave this one off, or should I?
Well, Jordan, you're the guest of honor. Why don't you start us off? Who are you looking for? Again, we're looking at counting stats. We're looking at wins, Ks. We don't necessarily care about our ratios in this scenario. Who you got that can count up some wins and Ks for you?
So I want to talk about Edward Cabrera. Just made his debut this past week. I think that a lot of us saw that, at least if you're really plugged in. Another member of that incredible Miami pipeline of starting pitchers who are all just pretty disgusting. A lot of ways. Has a really good fastball, really good slider is like his key pitch, but he did get knocked around a bit and gave up a lot of hard contact. And it was, I think Nick Pollock called it a careful Icarus, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. He had that back-to-back.
Yeah. So in his first, it is only one start, so it's not really a huge sample to take it from, but he did have a 94% left on base percentage and only had 2 strikeouts. Yeah, just there was a lot of bad stuff that did not happen that definitely could have in his first start. Tons of hard contact. And it was against the Nationals, which is not the most premier offense in the world.
Yeah, and he had to go up against Josiah Gray on the other side of the bump.
Yes,
so.
Exactly. So he actually was able to escape mostly unscathed until the very end of his outing, where he gave up it was 2 straight home runs. I can't remember who hit them off the top of my head, but gave up all of his earned runs in that start on 2 straight homers and then was pulled from the game. But I would feel okay taking a flyer on him this week because he has those 2 starts, obviously, and he's going up against the Mets and the Phillies, who respectively are 24th and 14th in the league in xWOBA against right-handed pitchers. So in terms of 2-start streaming options, he's probably like one of the better ones that you could choose. And I think that even though the offense isn't stellar behind him, he should be able to rack up more strikeouts than he did, because he had 62.2 innings in the minors this year with 91 strikeouts. He's not like a low strikeout guy. I don't think the 2 strikeouts that he got in his first start are reflective of his skills. So I would take the shot on Cabrera this week for sure.
Yeah, and I think that Cabrera, we were talking about this off air before, at least the way I feel, Cabrera is going to be a popular name on FAAB bids this week. So if
Absolutely.
you've got the cash, you're going to probably need to pay up relative to what you have to pay up this time of year to get a guy like this. It might not be triple digits because not many people have triple digits at this point.
Yeah.
But honestly, if you're in a position like I am, at least in my TGFBI, we're talking about this, I still have $250 or so left.
Yeah.
It's probably worth throwing a triple digit bid on a guy like Cabrera moving forward, with the assumption that he stays up. And there's really no reason for him to go back down pending, knock on wood, any injury or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would expect him to go either at least every fifth day, if not every sixth day, if they do go to a 6-man rotation when Pablo Lopez finally does come back. But that's not going to be this week. To your point, he's gonna get those 2 starts this week from everything I can tell.
Absolutely. Yeah. He'll be a good choice. This is mostly me just committing a violence against my co-host, Schwebzy. But yeah, run him out there against the Mets. Just do it.
Should be fine.
Listen to this. He's gonna destroy me tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, I'll pick somebody that's not going against the Mets. I'll be looking at another 2-start pitcher option this week. Go back to the Pirates. Bryce Wilson, who had a very good start in his last outing. He is very widely available as well, not rostered in any main events. 2% rostered in TGFBI, 1% rostered across Yahoo. He does have 2 starts. He's going up against the White Sox, which obviously on the surface doesn't look that great, but he stays in Chicago and gets the Cubs at the end of the weeks, which on paper and in every aspect of the game is amazing. It's almost as if he gets to face his Pirates. And so that's a beautiful schedule. And honestly, he has a beautiful schedule the rest of the way. He does face off against the Nationals in Pittsburgh. He travels to Miami. He does have to go into Cincinnati, and it looks like he'll line up against hosting the Cubs again later on in September. So honestly, I think Bryce Wilson is a nice little long-term play for the rest of the season. Maybe he's not going to get 2 starts every week. Obviously, he's probably the last time he gets 2 starts, but he can volume himself up. Pittsburgh's just letting him go, like something Atlanta never did. And Bryce Wilson was just like this prospect who put up really good numbers in the minors, looked like he was going to make that jump every year for 3 years. And I know I was burned by him plenty in at least one dynasty league where I rostered him probably 5 times over the course of that 3 years. And I'm not sure if it'll ever happen again, but it might, who knows, especially with the schedule that's coming up. But yeah, Pittsburgh's just letting him go. And I think that they need to, because I think they really need to see him get the innings that he wasn't getting with Atlanta. Like throughout the whole season, he put up 55 and a third inning in AAA this year, and he's put up 53 and 2/3 inning in major league innings between Atlanta and Pittsburgh thus far. So he threw 141 innings in 2019. I'm skipping 2020 for obvious reasons. So I'm assuming Pittsburgh wants to get him at least to match that total this year. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is that they let him just go out and do his thing every 5th day for the rest of the month, or through the month of September. You know, obviously, he did some really nice things in his last start. I'm going to pull up Nick Pollock's SP roundup from last week after he had that start, where he had a 31% CSW. He threw 74 pitches against the Diamondbacks. He was really good. He had a really good 4-seamer. I'll just quote Nick. He's like, his 4-seamer was legit, landing in the top third of the zone and earning 9 whiffs, while his changeup found the edges, and even curveballs went for 4 out of 8 whiffs. He does have the White Sox. He doesn't like that, sure, but this is a 2-star we're talking about, especially like an NFBC league where you don't have a choice. And I want that Cubs matchup. And the White Sox, they strike out their fair share. They're about mid-tier in the league. They have 23.6% K rate in the month of August, which is 14th in baseball. The Cubs are a nice 30.4%, the worst in Major League Baseball in the month. And they're the worst in baseball all season. And that was at all season. They're at 26.8%. So the Cubs are just getting worse and worse as you go. That matchup alone is too good to weigh out. So I'll roll my dice with Bryce to steal Nick's roundup title with the White Sox, just so I can get that Cubs matchup.
Love it. I will say, and this is 1, incredibly anecdotal, 2, just because I think it'd be funny to throw some cold water on it. The Cubs did just put up 7 on Lance Lynn tonight.
Oh, that's true.
They wrecked him. If Lance Lynn can't get the Cubs,
then who can?
Bryce Wilson better than Lance Lynn, confirmed maybe at some point.
We'll find out.
Transitive
property of equality that affects.
Please don't send me hate mail or tweets. I know it's a joke. Please.
At Bun Singles. Okay, moving on. And I'll give a shout out.
80 grade.
I will with a 8-0. No,
actually, no. Should we just direct him at Kevin?
Oh yes,
he's not here. It's fine. I'm acting as a proxy for Kevin this week, so send all of your hate mail to him. Thank you. Okay.
I'll give a shout out to Houston's Jake Odorizzi. If nothing else, he's widely rostered in 15 teamers, 100% in the main event, 93% TGFBI, but he also has a very sweet schedule moving forward. He faces at Seattle, and then he gets Seattle again the following week. And the Houston schedule for the remainder of the year is tasty, for lack of a better word. So keep an eye on Odorizzi if he does slip through the cracks and gets dropped. This is obvious. This is also my opportunity to give that weekly reminder. Always watch your drops. Like when you look at who you win, make sure you're looking at who was dropped at the same time. And if anybody's even slightly interesting, just add them to your bid list, and then you can take them off later. All right, we talked about two guys who have two starts this coming week, Jordan. So let's look ahead at the future start pitchers. So these are pitchers that look like they are going to get two starts the following week. So we are looking at, I got a list here that are 50% rostered in Yahoo or less. So less than 50% rostered in Yahoo. And I get that list from Yahoo. I also utilize Justin Wick's SP Future Schedule article over at Pitcher List as well. So it's something everybody should be keeping an eye on. He looks at the best and worst schedules, upcoming schedules, and predicts at least 2 weeks in advance for that. So especially this time of year, you want to get ahead. Make sure you're looking over Justin's article over there as well. So you've got the list in front of you. There's a little longer list than we've had in the past couple of weeks. So I'm just going to let you go ahead and pick. I'll fill in some names for our listeners that you don't happen to talk about, just so they're a little bit more aware. But for lack of wanting to go through every single one of these players, why don't you just go ahead and tell me who's your favorite, and then who would you be fading that you think that other people would be interested in for whatever reason?
So I think I'll start right at the top at like the precipice of being out of that 50% range, and that's with Eliezer Hernandez. This is someone that I liked a lot after Mikey Ahedo, formerly of Pitcher List and now of Baseball Prospectus, was pretty hyped on at the beginning of the year. Very high on Eliezer until he got hurt swinging a bat. Please bring back the DH.
That's it. That's all I get to say. Yeah, just do it.
But then, so the two starts that he has lined up right in a row, he has a start at the Mets and then a start at home versus the Mets. The Mets offense has been painful to watch, and I feel that pain every single week doing the podcast with Schwebzy. It's been very rough. I think that his pitch counts is going to be working up as we go here, and I think that facing a below par offense like the Mets is going to be a good sign that you're going to be able to get some good production out of Eliezer. And just in comparison to everyone else that's on this list, I'm looking at other names like someone like Tarek Skubal, Miles Mikolas, who else is on here? John Gant is one that I'm just like, absolutely not. Like John Gant has the sexiest schedule of anyone on here. He's got the Cubs, then Cleveland, then Kansas City. I am 0% interested in John Gant. But yeah, Eliezer Hernandez does have the Mets twice, then Atlanta, not necessarily too great there, but you could do much worse. And I think Eliezer Hernandez is my favorite pick out of this list.
Yeah, this list sucks. I'm just gonna.
It's not fun. It's not fun.
A terrible list. When I'm tempted to take Matt Harvey just because he has a matchup against Kansas City. I don't feel good about it, and no. Sorry, Kevin, but yeah, I'll echo pretty much everything you said. I like Skubal in here, but I don't think he'll actually hold on to that 2 start, especially the way that the Tigers are handling their young guns out there. It's nice to see Kyle Freeland get out of Colorado at least for one, but he hosts the Giants in Colorado for one, so
nightmare.
It's tough. I might be more tempted into diving a little bit deeper and seeing who is lined up for a Sunday start this coming week and hope that they get pushed back for and then get a 2 start next week. But that would mean that they lose out on their 2 start this week. You take some, you get some, you lose some. But so I'm gonna go ahead and pull a push here. And the other one is like Matt Moore. Can I really say his name out loud? But his is probably the second best schedule of the next 3 starts. He's at Washington. He faces your Brewers in Milwaukee, which obviously isn't great. But then he gets Colorado at home. Colorado on the road. Rocky Road. You love that. You love to see that. So I don't know,
For
like
sure.
maybe he's the type of guy that like you pick up for $1, you play him against Washington, and then you see what happens. And you just say like, oh, maybe he did okay. I don't know. Probably not. But a name, if you're in desperation mode, which some people are right now. I know I am in at least one league. He's somebody to, maybe he's your 8th contingency bid on a string of filling in that pitcher spot.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. There's really not many good names on this list. I was trying to think like maybe Eric Lauer wouldn't be bad after that San Francisco start because he's got Philly and then Cleveland.
Yeah.
But even that is like pretty questionable, honestly. I'm personally not a huge Eric Lauer fan. Just too inconsistent, nibbles a lot. Just not really my style. If I had to choose literally anyone else on here, it'd probably be Chris Bubich because he gets Cleveland and then it's not ideal. It's at Baltimore, but that's 2 pretty good starts in a row.
I worry about him as well, keeping that 2-start thing just because of that 6-man rotation that Kansas City is doing as well. Even a 6-man rotation, every once in a while, somebody gets a 2-start week. So somebody keep an eye on.
Exactly. Love it. All right.
Let's move on to our ratios then. We'll get away from our starters and typically move into our relievers. And I'm gonna kick us off only because I was really surprised I put his name on any kind of recommendation list based on what we've seen most of the season. But it's Garrett Richards is the guy I'm looking at right now. Of course, in Boston, 47% roster to main event, 42% TGFBI. My note here just says, "What? Really? Like Garrett Richards?" But
you said what we were all feeling.
He moved into the bullpen.
Man.
About 2 weeks ago, which is, as a Red Sox fan, I'm pretty sure I was echoing all of Red Sox Nation saying, thank you, finally.
Houck has a home, my boy, my sweet baby boy. Oh.
But Richards has been great, in his role, which is not terribly surprising based on his repertoire, the slider and the heavy fastball usage. So he's doing really good. He's so far 10 innings through 5 appearances. So he's had some longer appearances as well, 4 innings stint, a 3-inning stint. He's only allowed 1 earned run. He's only walked 3 while striking out 12 in that 10 innings. He does have an outside chance of getting a save here again, now and again, with Barnes trying to get right, as Alex Cora mentioned. I think Cora actually mentioned Richards as a possibility to throw in there every once in a while, or just just to check and see. But I think basically, obviously, with his starting history, he probably works better in a fireman type of role, going 2 to 4 innings at a time, and even coming in on a blow up day when the Red Sox just need somebody to eat some innings, who it doesn't really matter what happens to them at this point. The Red Sox don't have a ton of those, obviously. They've actually been good this season for the most part. But I can see him being really useful down the stretch, especially as Chris Sale is obviously working his way back still and looks really good. But at any time, you see anything from him, you're going to want to hold back. Maybe Sale doesn't go 7 innings most days. You need somebody to eat those innings after his starts as well. I think Garrett Richards is somebody that if you didn't drop him when he exited the rotation, first of all, you probably should have dropped him while he was in the rotation. But if you didn't drop him, don't drop him now. And if you need somebody to add those extra innings in that spot, Richard's probably in a better role than he was when he was in the rotation. He's going to do more for your teams now than he did before.
Yeah, for sure. I like this call out a lot, honestly. It harkens back to why we find value in people like Brent Suter to be a huge homer. Right. It's like when you have people that are in these fireman roles that can pitch multiple innings. Yeah, exactly. You have folks like this that can come in, pitch multiple innings, follow a starter and stuff like that. And it just allows you to just vulture so much value.
Yeah. And if he follows Tanner Hoke, because for some reason they don't want to continue they don't want to just let him go and see what he can do, which is what they need to do at this point.
4.1 innings.
Yeah.
Man.
Richards can come in and vulture that win like Suter does so often.
Literally leading the Brewers in wins this year. I think he's still got 12. I don't think he got his 13th yet, but yeah, that's very good. Any other guys that you want to talk about with ratios?
I just want to give a call out the fact that Dalton Jeffries was back in Oakland. He got called back up. No set date for him to enter the rotation, so he might be a bullpen. And if he is a bullpen, this is the time to go get him now. And if you need that you need that help. If he's in the bullpen, he's going to help your ratios in the same respect that Richards is going to. And then maybe he walks into a spot start down the stretch as well. So I think that's a good volume guy. I've been wanting to scrape the bottom of the barrel. I mean, I don't have a lot on him, but look at Andrew Albers, if for no other in Minnesota. Only 2 points I want to make about that. Minnesota has nobody left in that rotation. So he will probably keep that spot. He's not going to get you strikeouts, but he's looked pretty good on the ratios side, and he gets the Cubs. So if he's going to get strikeouts at any point, it's going to be this week.
Just a man after my own heart, just crapping all over the Cubs. I'm sorry, Cubs fans. I do love you. I appreciate you still.
I'm in Indianapolis, so there's a split geographically. It's either Cubs fan flags or Reds flags, and obviously the Cubs being the Cubs, usually they're a little bit more prominent. But we have the Pirates AAA team here, so you never see any of those. Jordan, who do you got in this category to help out your ratios? Again, ratios should not be ignored this late in the season. Teams can always come back to you. You can still make up ground. So who's going to help you out in that area?
Can I honestly just say Aaron Ashby right now and then wax poetic on him later in the episode? I'm going to talk about Aaron Ashby later in the episode because this is incredibly on brand for me. But I also think that Aaron Ashby is a really good choice for something like this because he is technically a long reliever. He's going to be making spot starts probably for the rest of the season to relieve the rest of the Brewers' starting pitching staff. But he also has had a couple different relief outings that he's done really well in. He's only walked one person in his last 3 outings, which is fantastic. The whip's very, very good. I think he's got a whip of 0.83 or something like that.
It's under 1
in his last 3 outings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the slider is gross. The sinker in relief has hit 99, which I did not know was a thing.
Yeah.
That's excellent to see. That just makes me even happier. But yeah, so I would say Aaron Ashby.
Yeah, hit 99, averaging 96, 97 throughout his last 3 appearances as well. So it doesn't look like, even as he's getting stretched out more and more, it doesn't look like he's going to lose. He's losing much on that. And honestly, if he gets stretched out to 5, 6, 7 innings and he goes down to 95, 96, fine.
So what? Yeah. So what?
All right, cool. Then we will move on to everybody's favorite category, and that is the saves category.
Boo what?
They're saying boo earns, sir.
I was seeing boo earns. Sorry, I had to do it. I had to do my mole man.
That's nice. Yeah, no, we don't. I know we don't want to talk about this. We got to. I'll stay in Boston myself, and I know I said that Garrett Richards has a possibility of chipping in a save or two. I think Hansel Robles can walk into a save opportunity. Then Garrett Richards can too. I think the obvious answer here, though, with Matt Barnes getting himself right, is Adam Ottavino. Though Adam Ottavino was like the one name that Cora did not mention to be an option, but it's just the obvious one. I'm perfectly fine completely staying away from this situation altogether, unless you're completely desperate and you need a dart to throw. I'm probably still going to throw it out of, if nothing else, even if he doesn't get the saves, he's not going to hurt you elsewhere. He's been very good and he'll help you in the other categories. I do think that Barnes is going to get the job back no matter how bad he's been this month, which has been really bad, like a 16 ERA or something silly, double-digit ERA for sure. And I think out of it would be the dart I would throw if I'm desperate. Luckily, I'm not, because I paid up for saves in most of my drafts and did not get stuck with a Trevor Rosenthal or anybody like that. I will not be going after the situation. I would not recommend anybody going after this recommendation, but I know that there are people out there that are more desperate than me. And if you have to, Ottavino is the safest play.
Hi, hello, it's me.
Yeah. Jordan,
a desperate person.
What other desperate moves are you looking to make?
So this one's going to come off as very desperate. I don't think anyone's talking about Drew Steckenrider. I brought him up last week on In the Deep. I think that he's second in line behind Seawald right now with, oh my gosh, why can't it?
Diego Castillo on the shelf.
Is hurt. Yeah, he's on the shelf with, I think, an elbow issue, if I'm not mistaken, or a shoulder issue. I can't remember which. I think Steckenrider's the second in line. And if people aren't aware, the Mariners are like negative 60 or negative 80 in run differential, but somehow just still manage to keep winning games.
They play their opponents like however good or bad their opponents are. That's how they play.
Exactly. It's honestly wild. It's great that they're winning some against. I think it was what Baseball Ref put on there. They have a fun differential stat on the Mariners team page for this year. Something like that they put on there, which is pretty cool, pretty funny. Again, the run differential is what it is, and they still have a winning record. They're playing in a lot of very close games, which, I mean, Paul Sewald can't pitch every single day, and Steckenrider over his last 9 appearances has pitched a completely scoreless. He's had multiple wins and saves over that time as well. He's got 2 wins and 3 saves. The ratios aren't really great. Like, he's got a pretty high whip and the Ks aren't there. But if you can just find a way to get some easy saves and wins at this point in the season, I would absolutely take it. And Steckenrider is getting like high leverage situations and high leverage innings. So I would probably entertain adding him. He's borderline even in a 15-team league, if I'm being completely honest. But if you have a league that you're in that's deeper than that, then I would at least entertain picking him up.
Yeah, it's one of your O's. It's that opportunity. He's second in line for sure. Steve sounds like a challenge, but I'm pretty sure Steve cannot pitch every day, like you said. So
I know Steve would love to pitch.
Yes, he would.
He seems like the type of guy that just seems like he'd be down for that, but also that's not sustainable.
No. The rest of the season's short. It's only like 5 weeks left. Let me do it. I got it.
That's fine.
All right, we're done talking about closers. Moving on, Our final recommendation category, our wild card section. I got 2 guys I want in here, and then I will let you talk about Aaron Ashby for the remainder of the episode. Okay, Jordan?
Yes.
So these are real wild cards, I think, but these both come based on the fact that we do have expanded rosters coming up next week, September 1st. The rosters do go from 26 to 28. They don't go to the full 40 like they did prior to back in 2019 or so. So I do think that most teams, especially teams in contention, are going to fill those roster spots with pitchers, or at least one of them, if not both of them, just to give their guys added rest and continue to save some of their starters innings, especially after seeing them only hit maybe at max 50 to 70 innings last year in the shortened seasons. I'm looking in Minnesota. Again, like I mentioned, they have nobody left in that rotation.
Yeah.
And I'm just keeping an eye on Joe Ryan, who they traded for with Tampa Bay, who played in the Olympics. So my logic here is that he did play in the Olympics. He did get some innings in that way, but they weren't true innings. They weren't in the Minnesota franchise, in their minor league system.
Yep.
I think that they could utilize him in Minnesota to get a better look at who they just traded for. And he's also been very good, racking up strikeouts left and right. Even if he comes up and just is in a bullpen role, he has the ability to tack on. If they use him to get his innings up, he could count up those counting stats in the pitching categories without hurting you elsewhere. The one negative here, he's not currently on the 40-man roster. Minnesota does have Kenta Maeda, who is likely to go get Tommy John surgery, so they could easily move him to the 60-day IL, or one of their other 23 guys that are on the IL. They could move into the 60-day and open up a roster spot and move him onto the 40-man pretty easily. He's in AAA, so the opportunity to move him is obviously easier. And that moves on to my second guy to keep an eye on. I think this might be even more likely only because he is on the 40-man roster, and that's the Red Sox Connor Siebold. You'd say you're a homer. I've recommended like 4 different Red Sox players, and it's probably the most of any one episode this season. So I'm going to stick with it. Connor Siebold, he's been amazing. Go look up Pete Ball on Twitter, Pete B. Ball, and he tweeted out his August numbers, which are just impressive. They're just really impressive at AAA. So I could totally see him being one of the 2 September call-ups for Boston, making a spot start here or there, racking up strikeouts. Of course, Siebold is one of the acquisitions that Chaim Bloom made last year when he traded Brandon Workman over to Philadelphia. He got Nick Pivetta and Connor Siebold, which has ultimately worked out pretty good. Heath Hembree was in that deal as well.
Oh, I saw that tweet. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So
an absolute thievery.
Yeah.
Is what that was.
So look that up at Pete B. Ball. He's also a co-host of Keep or Cut podcast as well. Connor Siebold, keep an eye on him. If you have a stash spot, this is the time where if he's going to get called up, it'll be the end of the week, maybe early the following week with the September roster expansions, because we don't have the situation that we had a couple of years ago where you had a 40-man option. A lot of teams would do is they would just spread out their call-ups like throughout the month of September. They wouldn't call up 30 guys all at once. Yeah. They spread out. Some teams didn't even call up they didn't fill all 40 spots. This year, it's only 2 spots. So they're going to call up both the guys, I think, right away, or at least within the first day or 2 of September of the calendar flipping. So keep an eye on Connor Siebold, I say.
Love it.
All right, Jordan. So we had a mailbag we did on our Twitter. on the Twitter, and it was pretty sure it's directed at you. So I'm going to let you take this. I'll read this out. This is coming from @QC Piglets on Twitter. It says, is my league mate who is in half win mode now / half rebuild and fighting to make the playoffs. So I'm assuming it's a head-to-head league, a dope for holding on to Aaron Ashby instead of dealing him for a win now arm. He says yes, but he'll listen to what you have to say about Aaron Ashby and whether or not he's useful down the stretch here, or if before a trade deadline, he should be traded for a more guaranteed win now piece.
So first off, I just want to thank QC Piglets for asking this question when I'm on the show. That's very kind of you directing this at me. I appreciate it. But I will say I'm incredibly adamant about the fact that I think Aaron Ashby is the next big Brewers ace, like full stop. I think that next year he's going to be the SP4 coming out of spring training. He'll just easily surpass both Adrian Hauser and Brett Anderson. I don't think that there's going to be a contest there. He was really impressive in spring training this year, which is why they kept him around longer than any of the other young guys. But he'll be just behind their big three currently of Woodruff, Burns, and Peralta. So today that this is releasing, he does have a start, and he's listed as the SP6 for the Brewers on Fangraphs right now. So I don't know if he's going to stick in the rotation the whole time, but he's at least going to be making some spot starts for the rest of the year.
The Brewers, to cut you out, but like we talk about the whole time, but the Brewers were the one team that was very vocal about the limitations they were going to put on the likes of Corbin Burns and Woodruff and what have you, based on how many innings they did last year. So we're hitting that. They said they'll probably hit around 100 innings more than they had last year. And we're coming up to that very soon, if not already past for at least one of those guys. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if they at the very least stick with a 6-man rotation.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, is it's super important that they do that, I think, right now too, because just like in the past past week, I think it's been, is like Brett Anderson just had a hip issue the other day in his start. And then Freddie Peralta had shoulder issue in his previous start too, not requiring an IL stint in either case. Like Brett Anderson is still lining up to make his next start. But it's very important that Ashby is there, and I think he's going to get his reps for the rest of the year. So I think regardless of if you're in like win now mode or rebuild, Ashby is a really good arm to have. He's going to be really valuable in the coming years too, I think. And for now, yeah, he's going to be making his spot starts, but I'd say that he's like in a similar vein of value as Brent Suter, where even if he isn't starting, I think he's going to be a follower for people, so he can help limit those innings as well. So again, if they don't go with the 6-man rotation, go with a 5-man, but then have people only pitch 3 or 4 innings each start, and then have a planned follower.
Or even piggyback, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he could maybe steal some wins here and there. So just to go over Ashby's credentials real quick for those that aren't familiar, in AAA this year, he's racked up 100 strikeouts over 63.1 innings. And for those that are bad at math like me and had to look it up, that's 14.21 strikeouts per 9, which is very good. Downside was that he did have a pretty inflated whip of 1.73. Depending on who you ask, which obviously if you're asking me, I think he's the best, but he's probably the first or second best pitching prospect in the Brewers organization, right in line with Ethan Small would be the other one that people would point to. His biggest weakness in the minors was getting bit by giving up too many free passes, which is actually something that he's been pretty good about since being called up the second time. He got called up for his first ever start, only got 1 out against the Cubs. And then since then only has 1 walk in 3 appearances, as opposed to 3 in that first appearance where he only got through 1 out. I don't know. I'm super adamant that, again, like I previously stated, the slider is very good. It's a legit pitch. And then the fact that he is able to, at least in relief, hit 99 with his sinker, which is something that I was not expecting in any capacity when he first came up. And the changeup has looked really good too. The fact that I think he has 3 legit pitches, he's going to be a weapon in the coming years. So I don't think that in either case, whether hanging on to him or dealing him for a win now arm, you could. I would just much rather hang on to him.
So if you were looking at a win now arm, let's throw out a couple names and just tell you. I'm going to start easy. And I think I know you'll go with this, but somebody who's in a very similar situation, I think, and we mentioned him earlier in the podcast, is Tanner Houck in Boston. In a very kind of similar situation. Who's going to help you win now more in that situation, Ashby or Houck?
It's like making me choose between my children. This is tough. So for those that don't know, I wrote an article about Tanner Houck before the season started, and I was very excited about him. Oh boy. I think that right now I would rather have Houck because I think he is built up a bit more. And also I think that the strikeout potential is a little bit higher.
Okay. Now we'll stay young. And now what about somebody like Edward Cabrera, which obviously has similar dynasty feelings, but he's in that rotation in Miami. Like Milwaukee, Miami obviously has a good track record of developing their pitchers, at least recently. So because Cabrera probably has a more guaranteed spot in that rotation, who do you take the rest of this year? Ashby, based on what you said about his situation, or Cabrera, assuming he stays in that rotation?
I think just based off of what we've seen so far, I still think I would take Ashby, honestly.
Okay. All right. And then let me try one more. This guy hasn't pitched in a while, but he's the opposite of Ashby, and that is Jose Urquidy in Houston, who is set to make his third rehab start, I believe, on Sunday. So by the time you're listening to this, he might be starting already, who probably will come back for Houston following that, assuming everything continues to look as good as his last two rehab starts have. With the schedule that Houston has moving forward, combined with the control, obviously, that Urquidy has shown, he's striking out guys in his rehab starts as well, but he's obviously more known for his control, his low whip, low ratios. Who do you like better moving forward this year?
I think that if I had to try to win this year, then I probably would take Urquidy in that case. It would feel really painful to give up Ashby just for future value sake, but also Urquidy is still a very good piece, like moving forward as well. So I'd be a guy with ratios like that is a really good stabilizer and has like pretty decent strikeout, like not huge, but decent strikeout upside, and is playing with a really elite offense behind him. I would be fine probably giving up Ashby for Urquidy.
All right, that's good. You guys heard here, probably our longest dynasty talk of the year on this show. But yeah, it's nice. Nice to talk about it. All right, I think that's going to do it for our recommendations. Kevin usually ends the episode with some parting words. I don't really have any parting words for anybody that we probably haven't said, at least at some point during this episode. And I just want to give everybody a shout out for continuing to do this thing that we call a full season of fantasy baseball. Yes. If you're still listening at this point in the season, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. I know Kevin does as well. I'm assuming Jordan does as well. Yes. I won't speak for him, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening. If this is the first time you're listening, if it's the 30th time you're listening to us, I greatly appreciate it. And hopefully you'll stick with us through the rest of the season. We still got 5 more episodes, and we will be doing some episodes throughout the off season as well as we prep for 2022. So, my advice for you is to just keep at it. Don't give up, and keep on, as the term would be, keep on grinding the rest of the way.
Absolutely. Love it. Yeah. And hey, I just want to say real quick, thank you for having me on. This was awesome.
Yeah, Jordan, you have filled the shoes and then some. I greatly appreciate you taking the time, man.
I know you're just buttering me up. I know. It's fine.
I want to make sure you come back on the show again. I want to make sure you feel comfortable.
You're going to ask me back?
Maybe you just show, maybe the link is still open. You just show up one time.
Hey guys, what's up?
Are we still recording?
What are you talking about?
All right, we talked about a lot of players. So if there's a player that you're thinking about bidding on and you want us to discuss it, let us know. You can email us at onthewirepod@gmail.com. You can shoot us a DM on the Twitter. Our DMs are open at onthewirepod. Of course, you should be joining PL Plus over at pitcherlist.com. You get access to the Pitcherlist Discord and the advice and banter of all the members of the Pitcherlist staff. We're just waiting to help you win your league, including Jordan and myself. And of course, I want to thank Jordan White once again for joining me on this episode. Jordan, you remind everybody how they can continue to listen to you and what you have working on in the future.
So in terms of future stuff, Schwebzy and I are still trying to figure out the format of the off-season episodes and how often we're going to do them. But you can always catch us during the season streaming the prep and the recording of the In the Deep podcast every Sunday night starting around 9 p.m. Eastern time at twitch.tv/Schwebzy. Fair warning, much like other Pitcherless shows, the stream runs a little bit long, and we often don't, we won't wrap up until 2:30 a.m. Eastern sometimes, or even later on some occasions. So if you're a night owl, feel free to join us. But it does offer an opportunity to interact with Schwebzy and I directly if that's your bag. And you can also, again, on my Twitter, find me at Bunt Singles. You can find In the Deep PL at In the Deep PL. And you can find my co-host Schwebzy, who is also a great baseball mind and very handsome and much better at what he does than what I do. At Schwebsy, that's SHWEBSI.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Jordan, again. That's going to do it for this week's On the Wire. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and leaving a rating review is always appreciated. You can follow myself on the Twitter at 80grade. That's all spelled out. You can follow Kevin at Hastings Kevin, and Jordan, like you said, is at Bunt Singles. And make sure to follow at Pitcher List Pods to get updates about every new episode of all the Pitcher List Podcast Network shows, including Jordan and Schwebsy's In the Deep every Monday. Give them all a listen. We wish you the best of luck in all of your leagues and hope you win all of your bids by exactly $1. Thanks once again to Jordan for joining me. And on behalf of Kevin Hastings, I am Adam Howe. And with that, we bid you goodbye.
McDonald's presents Burger Reviews by Hamburglar. Today's review, the classic Big Mac, Hamburglar. Robble, robble. He said, there's more sauce in every bite. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Brabble. Available at most restaurants in this area.
Hey parents, Greenlight is here to take one big thing off your to-do list, teaching your kids about money. With a Greenlight debit card and money app of their own, kids and teens learn to earn, save, and invest. You can send money instantly, set flexible controls, and get real-time notifications of your kids' money activity. Set up chores, and put allowance on autopilot to reward them for their hard work. Then, learn about the world of money together. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.